Hello, everyone, and welcome. The Sports Writers Podcast is underway. We're back here for the fall of 2022. Joining us, Matt Williams from the Salem News, Nick Kukuru from the Gloucester Times, and we think Phil Stacey might be joining us shortly in just a moment. But Matt and Nick, let's begin with some high school football talk. But actually, let me just change that a bit. Let's begin with some college football talk because Endicott College underway. They won on Saturday at St. Lawrence. We have a weekly show with Coach Paul McGonigal from Endicott College, and so far they're looking good. They were picked to win their league. I guess a narrow voting thing with the media and so on in that league poll or whatever. But what do you know about Endicott College, Matt?
Well, I thought it was, you could tell us what Coach, maybe had to say or didn't have to say, but I thought it was pretty cool to see Clayton Marengi win the starting quarterback job. Right out of Linfield, played in the Cape Ann League, former Cape Ann League MVP, and to be the starting quarterback at a team that's on the precipice of being nationally ranked there in Division III. I mean, that's legit. That's no small potatoes there. So I know it was a really really intense quarterback competition there in camp because they had two guys, I think three guys that all played last year. They had some injuries, including Clayton had an injury last year. I think he played maybe one game or something like that. And now all of a sudden comes out the starter QB1 in the first game and kind of lights it up. I mean, Endicott wins fairly easily over a fairly good team. So that's cool to see that you can take that path and stay right in a Division 4 or 5 team, in the Cape Ann League and go be a legitimate high level starting quarterback in college. You don't have to go to some prep school or some Catholic school. Like, that's kind of awesome. I know Linfield's a little bit outside of our coverage area, but I mean, I know the coaches over there pretty well and stuff. And just, when you see a local guy having success, that's pretty cool. To me, that was what stood out from their opener.
Absolutely, and might get a little bit tougher this week when they travel to WPI for a Friday night game. So they're on the Friday night schedule, just like the high schoolers are, to open up the 2022 seasons. And again, we did an interview with Coach McGonigal. It was posted Monday, yesterday. So as we record this on Monday, actually. Well, gentlemen, let's begin with some high school football talk. What do we know so far? I mean, you've been out talking with coaches, checking out scrimmages, and who's strong in 2022?
Nick, what have you seen there up on
Yeah.
Cape Ann so far?
Well, I saw Gloucester against Ipswich, and I thought Gloucester handled them a bit. I was a little surprised actually how much they handled them. I thought Ipswich was, taking a step up, but it was a good sign for Gloucester. Shows that they've kind of, maybe have taken a step up in the right direction as Ipswich beat them last season. But I mean, they obviously didn't light the world on fire or anything like that, but they looked improved from last season for sure. Manchester Essex, I have not seen yet. They've had a couple scrimmages, but they should be pretty solid too. Probably about as good as last year. I don't know if they'll finish 8-2 like they did last season. They got a much more difficult schedule with a lot of games against the Commonwealth Lodge. Your Whittier Techs instead of Minutemen. So those automatic wins are out the window. They got a much more competitive schedule this year, but they should be a Division 8 playoff team this year as well. Where I think Gloucester probably on the bubble in Division 5. If we're being honest, they got about 3 or 4 games against evenly matched teams, and they'll probably have to win just about all of them if they want to get in. So they'll be an interesting watch.
And they will
Nick,
be opening up Saturday at Hamilton Wenham. I'm sorry, Matt.
Yes.
Phil Stacey has joined us as well here.
Yeah, sorry about that on a phone call. Sorry about that.
No
I was
problem.
gonna say, Nick, you're a an old school traditional Gloucester guy, and
Yeah.
Phil and I were talking off the pod a few weeks ago about some of the things Gloucester's had to do to kind of maintain that potential playoff spot. I mean, when you look at a schedule, you see Gloucester not playing Beverly, teams like that. I guess the Linds, the longtime rivals, they left the league anyway. So I guess Beverly's really the big one, but Swampscott, I guess, is another one too. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's kind of a
Yeah.
necessary evil, or is it disappointing, or there
I'd
seems to be
say
mixed feelings?
I'd say both. It is disappointing seeing that, the last time Gloucester and Beverly did not play was a rain out in 1957. And the last time Beverly and Gloucester were not on each other's schedule was 1920. So,
Wow.
you got a, 100+ year rivalry going back. So that's
I can't
disappointing
believe
to
you
see.
knew that off the top of your head. You
Well, I
think we
looked it
like
up. I
planned
looked
this
it up
out?
for your football tab. So
You think
that's
we
why.
scripted it, but
Not of course,
I,
not that. It was not
I,
scripted.
he
No.
was prepared. This man
Yeah.
It
comes
was
prepared.
prepared.
I gotta salute him.
That was my did you know in your football
Ah,
tab. So it's fresh in my mind. But yeah, I mean it's disappointing in that regard. On the other side of the coin, it's been pretty lopsided. Gloucester has not been able to really even come close to compete with them the last few years. I know it was 50-0 last season, and Beverly really called the dogs off early in that one. Beverly's backups were handing it to Gloucester's starters. So when you get yourself in a situation like that where Gloucester's fallen pretty far, they got to do something to try and get it back. I know, Marblehead did something similar about 10, 15 years ago and it worked. Saugus tried something similar, about 10 years ago and it didn't work. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think they'll get more wins with that schedule. But yeah, I mean, will it get them in the playoffs? They got very little margin for error with a bunch of Division 6 teams on their schedule.
mm.
Bill is bouncing in and out with us here. Bill,
sorry.
we've
I was going
started
to say that the scuttlebutt that I've heard from some Beverly folks on that is, why are they not playing us, meaning Beverly, now when, there was a stretch of, Nick, you know better than I, maybe 10, 12 years where Gloucester really took it to Beverly.
Not like this, though. I'd say that'd be my
yeah.
comeback. And and nowadays with this new system, Beverly doesn't have anything to gain by playing Gloucester now either. Whereas in the old system they did.
And I will say that I don't think that maybe Danny O'Connell looks at it and says, "Hey, we'd love to still play Beverly, but it doesn't benefit us. It really doesn't help Beverly." I'm sure Jeff Hutton knows that too. Like beating Gloucester by 50 points isn't going to bump them up the rankings at all. So in that sense, I think people just have a hard time understanding, well, why can't it just be the old NEC? Why can't, everybody play everybody? It's like, it just doesn't, what was, there was a time when people listened to transistor radios on the Red Sox every night, those days are gone too. Yeah, there were times when we had wood paneled station wagons, things change and demographics change. And in this case, the state playoff system has changed. So, I don't think it's necessarily for the worst thing for either program. You want to see Gloucester get back on its feet, playing teams more to its level, if that's the right way to say it. I think Salem's taken a similar tact. I know someone close to the Salem program thinks that with with a little bit of luck, they could start the season 5-0. Now, is that realistic? I don't know. But the way the schedule is set up, there are certainly 5 winnable games to start the season, which is what you want. Now, whether that gets you into the playoffs or not, I don't know. Just because you can beat a team doesn't mean it's going to give you those points you need. It's not like Danvers playing a Tewksbury or Beverly playing North Andover, that will get you points. But maybe in a case like Gloucester or even Salem, getting wins at this point is more important than getting those precious points that'll earn you a playoff spot.
I think you nailed it. I mean, it really is the reason for the changes. I think is the playoff system. It just opens up avenues for other teams, and I think not only are the teams around here looking to potentially play teams they're evenly matched with, but there's other the teams around the state are doing the same thing, right? So before, if you were looking for a quote unquote better matchup, you might not find any because everybody's schedule was full. But now everybody's kind of looking to partner up. It's like a middle school dance out there. Everybody's looking for a dance partner, and I think that is one thing that's different about this playoff system that's really opened up avenues for lots of different games. I mean, you look at some of the teams that Swampscott. I mean, Swampscott's playing Auburn. They found them.
Right.
Peabody going to Leominster. There's no way that without this playoff season, that's ever a game. Masco, I think, is playing Groton, if I'm not mistaken.
Grafton.
Grafton, sorry. Bishop Fenwick at Norton, so there's just a lot of
Marblehead and Concord Carlisle for a second year.
Right. I mean, you could
Fenwick playing Norton this week.
exactly
All
right.
kinds
I
of
mean,
examples, right?
yeah. So it's like that's one thing that's different. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but it's one thing that's different, and I think I have seen it in some of the other sports as well. I mean, I don't. You can speak to the field hockey. The girls soccer is very. Not a lot of teams have changed their schedule, but a lot of them are. Kind of already had that philosophy of let me play good teams from a big conference, and that's gonna help prepare me for the playoffs. Now I just get rewarded for that in terms of points, and I think we're seeing that across the board. People are looking to find good matchups. And I mean, that's a cool side effect, I guess, of this whole thing.
Well, you're right. It does extend to other sports. I mean, I remember looking at Ipswich's volleyball schedule. Now they're the defending state champions, Division 4, so they're not going to go out and schedule, let's say, I don't know, Dennis Yartmouth or someone like that. But locally, they can play bigger schools like Beverly and Marblehead and Danvers that'll give them great games. Win or lose, it'll prepare them for the postseason. And those NEC teams know they're playing against an elite Division 4 program that won a state title last year. So that's win-win, and you stay local for both schools. I think it's a really cool thing.
I think it's interesting too. Just talking to a couple of the soccer coaches, like they've benefited greatly because they already have relationships with a lot of the coaches from the big leagues, the MVC and the DCL. Because as it turns out, now that everybody's kind of figured out, like, well, okay, for this, the Cape Ann leagues really get a lot of points in Division 4. If I'm a Division 4 team, I'm calling up all these Cape Ann league teams, like, and saying, hey, can I play you so I can get some points? So there's been a little bit of kind of behind the scenes jockeying. Everybody's looking to kind of play the same teams and get the same conferences on their schedule. And of course, those teams only have so many spots. So, if you've already established a relationship or, things like that, I mean, we've seen that for many, many years, right? Like, oh, so and so, how come you're playing this team? Oh, I went to college with that guy's coach. We thought it'd be cool to play each other or whatever, so those things have like really helped if you already know the guys or girls from those big leagues because everybody's kind of trying to play the same teams. And if you're fortunate enough to get those games on your schedule, you're at a big advantage.
Well, if there's a flip side to it, I think it's that the teams that are down have a tough time climbing up because no one wants to play them,
right?
For fear that it's not helping that team that they want to play in their rankings at all. And their own, a lot of times when they're looking for outside games, they're finding the only ones that will play them are other teams in a similar boat. So it really doesn't help each other. If you're a struggling, say, Division 5 football program and you can play a struggling Division 6 football program, and okay, maybe that works out for the two programs to play each other. They both have an open date, but it's not really helping either one in terms of trying to bump up in the process. So I think that I don't know what the answer is to that because, hey, if you're a better team, why do you want to play a team that might be a layup win, but it's not going to do anything for you in the standings? And maybe this goes back to Coops, what you were saying about Gloucester and not playing Beverly this year and all. I mean, it might be difficult for them to find teams that want to play them at the same level or maybe even a level above at the current time. So I'm not really sure there's an answer how to get out of that. I really think that for programs such as that, playoffs shouldn't be the goal as much as getting back a winning culture and getting the kids to believe in building program numbers back up.
Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, especially, Gloucester and Salem. I mean, let's be honest, they're not going to be winning a Super Bowl this year. So I think, the focus for them is build some wins, get a little bit of attraction. Maybe more people, more kids will want to join the program, for a 6-5, a 7-4 team, even a 5-6 team over, a 2-3 win program.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Willie.
Ahead.
I was going to say, Salem lost badly to Beverly on Thanksgiving, but I think people forget they had a winning record last year. They went 6-5 last season. And I think they're seeing that in the numbers that are out this year and the enthusiasm and the work that the kids have put in the offseason. I mean, yeah, it stinks to lose on Thanksgiving, but there are residual effects the other way too. When you win 6 out of your 11 games and kids can look at it and say, hey, I'm not going to get my head kicked in 9 weeks of the year. We can win more than half the games we play here. So again, I really think that's key at this point for a lot of those schools.
It just doesn't bother me at all in the the non-football sports because you got 20 games. So one game really doesn't necessarily make that big a difference, or 16 in the case of soccer, 18, whatever it is. It's a lot of games, right? Twice as many games as football. And if you have a winning record, you're getting in. You right? So you're fighting about seeds, oh geez, I played one game I shouldn't have played. I dropped from 16 to 18 or 14 to 15, whatever the case. That's not that big a deal. The stinky thing, I think, with the football, and there's nothing you can do about it, is just half the games and half the teams are getting in the playoffs. So, I mean, you got a team like Revere that goes 8-2 and doesn't get in. I mean, when you got teams with a winning record that aren't getting in, those teams have to try to fit, the PowerPoints just are that much more important. Like in the so-called regular sports, I mean, as long as you get to 10-10, you're getting in. At least you got a chance, right? So if you go, 13-7, and maybe you played two games that you thought would be competitive that weren't, it's not the end of the world. Like it might change.
Like Beverly basketball
bit,
last year, playing what? Beverly basketball play that they lost to Catholic Memorial once, and they lost to who else did they? Oh, maybe St. Mary's.
Did they play Malden Catholic or was
Malden Catholic? Yeah. It's good memory, Bill. Yeah, and I mean, in the long run, it didn't really hurt them too much because they were going to get that, whatever it was, top 6 or top 8 ranking that they had. Did very well in the conference. So yeah, you're right. My question is, okay, so Revere is 8-2, and that's great, but how are they going to get somebody that is certainly where they aspire to be program-wise to play them? How are they going to get, let's say, a Swampscott to play them? How are they going to get a Masconomet to play them? It doesn't really behoove those schools to play Revere. You know what I'm saying?
It does. I disagree completely. They're in the GBL, and this is not your father's Revere team. They won the NEC the last time.
Good point.
So they beat Marblehead the last time they played them, and the last 2 seasons they've lost 3 games, 1 to Peabody, 2 to Everett. So I mean that's pretty good. So to me, I'd love to play them.
But would any of those schools play them though?
But I presume so. So the thing is, you're going to go ahead and presume that they're going to beat the Maldens, the Medford. You're going to get points for their wins. You know what I mean? So like, what you want to do is play a team like that that's going to be 5-3 at the worst, right? I mean, to me, that's like an advantage. But maybe I don't understand the system as well as some others. But to me, that's like, that's a good thing.
And where was Everett ranked last year when the final pairings came out before the playoffs?
I want to say
weren't they like 9th?
Let's see.
I feel like they were a road team.
But they I mean, so the problem for them is, well, I guess they beat they did beat Xaverian, but they only played one Catholic Conference team. They usually play 2 or 3, but I mean, yeah, I guess if you beat Xaverian, that ought to be good enough. Of course, they did then lose to Methuen, which kind of drops their they were 9th, undefeated at 9th.
Yeah, I thought so.
Which is kind of and they beat they beat Xaverian, and Xaverian was 4th. So that's a little screwy in my opinion.
Because Xaverian played St. John. Well, they would have played St. John's on Thanksgiving, but they played CM, they played BC High.
Right. DM, so-called Division 2 team, supposed to drag your rating down, but we get our annual a weekly shot at the MIA about that CM thing that we take every week on the podcast. But no, I don't know. It's interesting, because it sort of is the old Cape Ann League for, at least in the old power ranking, that was like, Masco often played Newburyport. Because it's like, well, if we can beat them, we know they're going to beat a lot of the teams in the Cal, so we're going to get a lot of points for all the games they're going to win, right? So to me, like, you want to play what you think is a big dog in a league, but maybe that has changed a little bit, and I have encountered some confusion talking to different coaches who have sort of trying to figure this out. Some guys are saying, well, I was told I should play teams from the bigger divisions. Look at Salem. They played teams in small divisions and their ranking was terrible, right? And it's like, well, is that because the teams they played were in small divisions or because the small division teams didn't have a lot of wins? In other words, if you play and beat St. Mary's Lynn, right, what are they, Division 6 or 7, but they're going to win a lot of games. So you're probably going to get a lot of points out of that, right? I don't know. So it seems like the coaches don't have a great grasp on this any better than we do. And I'm sure our fine friends at the MIAA would say, oh, it's all in this PowerPoint. It's really easy. It's really simple, but it doesn't seem that way at all.
Well, I think a perfect example of somebody who figured it out and used it to their advantage last year was Danvers. I mean, I remember looking at their non-league schedule last season and thinking, wow, that is a gauntlet to before you even get into conference play. I think they went, Tewksbury, Haverhill, and Reading to start the year?
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, did they beat Tewksbury? They beat Haverhill, and then they lost a close game to Reading, an excellent Reading team. And, then they struggled a little bit in the conference, which I was surprised at. But at 3-4, they had a home game for the playoffs, and they pulled a first-round upset.
And you wonder, was that just a down year for Division 4, or is that because they're Division 4? I mean, like the Haverhill one, that's an interesting example, Phil, of the inverse of what we were saying about St. Mary's Lynn. So,
yes.
Haverhill was down. So Haverhill got smoked by most of the teams in the MVC, which is a great league. So do you get more points by playing a team that's in a great league that lost a lot of games, or from a small league that won a lot of games? I don't know. I mean, that's sort of the opposite of what we were saying. So that's sort of.
I think it's how you play them. So what I noticed, covering Rockport and Manchester Essex, they're playing a lot of higher division teams, in every sport. And if there's a certain threshold. I know in soccer it's 3 goals. I'm not exactly sure what it is in football, but if you play a higher division team and you're within that threshold, it's basically like a win for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know Manchester Essex girls soccer stacked their schedule last year. They were a defensive team. They didn't allow a lot of goals. They couldn't score any goals, but they didn't lose by 3 or more to really anybody. And they ended up getting a 23rd seed in Division 4 with 2 wins, with a 2-16 record. So
wow.
If you're playing and you're competitive with those teams in a higher division, it seems to be a huge boon to your power rating.
Great point. Yeah, you're right. The margin of victory or loss is really important. It's a great point.
Let me just take this slightly different way. I've been thinking about this. I was going to drop it, but I'll continue with this. So, guys, like Phil, Matt, and Nick, when you guys were in high school, the Northeastern Conference, there was some parity in the league to some extent. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you were the last place team, you weren't thinking of going to another league to play games, but you were trying to get better the next year and compete. And so every week was pretty much a battle for the most part. There were given games that probably you could pick correctly and decide who was going to win or lose. But that's just not the case now in so many leagues. Like you look at all these different leagues and it's just not the case, at least in the leagues around here with the NEC, Cape Ann League, Greater Boston League, for sure. It's just not the same as it was.
I think that raises an excellent point, Bill. I go back, obviously I was in high school in the early to mid 80s.
I don't want you to one up me, Phil, but I was also in high school, by the way, just so you know.
No, okay. I know. No, it's quite a while ago. I got my fifth reunion coming up, I think, this year. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I always felt, when I was in high school, Beverly won the conference my sophomore year and junior year, and then I think finished third my senior year. But there was never really any givens. I mean, you felt like they would win, but it was never like, oh yeah, this is a breeze. We're playing Marblehead. Oh, we're playing. Danvers might have been a little bit down at the time, but Saugus was good. Winthrop was excellent. Marblehead always played tough. Of course, Swampscott was a great team. Gloucester played well. I know they got better towards the end of that decade, the 80s. But there were a lot of great games back then. And you're right. I think there's a lot more. It kind of reflects the way pro sports is. There's a lot more haves and have-nots. And I feel like it's easier to go into a season. I mean, I think the three of us, that work on the newspaper side of things that we're talking to here, could probably with pretty much certainty pick 90% of the playoff teams across all of our sports before the season even begins. I honestly feel that. And that's not to say that we're any great savants. I mean, it's our job and we should know these things, but I think that with the way the playoff system is set up and the teams that are traditionally strong and have stayed strong, I mean, is there any possibility in the world where Marblehead football is not going to make the playoffs? Any? No, none, zero.
No, it's possible.
You sure? And it's possible that a meteor strikes tomorrow too, but that's not going to happen either.
I mean, it's unlikely, it's 90, 95%. But I mean, that's the same thing. Same's true of St. John's Prep and Bishop Fenwick.
Right.
And I mean, we don't really have very many bubble teams, I don't think.
No, there are a few, but I mean, I think by and large, maybe 90 is a bit high, but across all sports, we could certainly look at it and say we could get 75%, I feel like, pretty easily. And that's, again, it's not because, we're so smart. That's not it at all. It's just that you look at the way that the playoffs are set up now, and schedules are made, and the strength of programs, and who's, stays at a level, whether it's championship level or just, they're always going to be good for 12 or 13 wins kind of thing. And other teams that are, in a rebuilding mode or just not there yet, or the schedule they play does not allow them to get into that playoff conversation. And that's what it is. If that answers your original question, Bill.
I don't know if I had a question as such, but I
do think there's some parity in the Cape Ann League. I mean, I'm just looking at the Baker, the Amesbury, Hamilton, Wenham, Ipswich, and Linfield. Now, Ipswich was down last year, but I mean, I think all four of those teams have won the championship at least once in the last 7 years. I think with Moscow leaving the league, even in the large, North Reading's been a monster a little bit, but they've had good games with Newburyport and Pentucket. Triton's been down, but they were up 3 or 4 years ago when Pat Sheehan was still there. So I think there's some parity in the Cal. The NEC has been very top heavy with the monster that Marblehead is. And, Beverly kind of took a run at him and then fell apart. Danvers took a run at him and then fell apart and is trying to build back up. And, I mean, Revere got him the one time of all the teams. I don't think if we were on this podcast in 2016 and we said, well, who's finally going to beat these guys? I don't think any one of us would have raised our hand and said Revere. So, I mean, kudos to those guys over there for pulling that off, but I think,
I'll tell you though, prior to that, Matt, I saw Revere a few times and they were they had some real athletes on those teams back then.
And you know what? Lou is
He's a great coach.
We know it, but I don't know how many people that don't see Revere regularly know what a good coach Lou is. He's got a really good staff over there.
Yeah.
Scotty Vlasic still with him, Willie?
As far as I know, I think he took last year off, but as far as I know, he's back around.
So he surrounds himself with good people. He gets those kids to buy into the, I don't know if it's the us against the word mentality, but like, hey, I mean, we do the simple things. We repeat them over and over until they become, they just become known, repetitious, I should say. And, we're willing to do the hard work that others aren't. We're going to win games in the fourth quarter and things of that nature. And it's paying off over there.
Absolutely. No, I think it's interesting. Real quick, guys, what's maybe we'll go around the table here. Like, what's your biggest question mark heading into week one? Like, what are you looking to learn, or what's one thing you have your eye on that you want to see here in week one from somebody or some team or whatever?
Could go a couple different ways with this. I want to know for all their firepower, how is St. John's Prep going to be under quarterback? Yep. Under center, 4 guys going for the job. The transfer from Austin Prep gets it. They get a ton of playmakers, offensive weapons galore, but can they get those guys the ball? What's going to happen with Beverly? You're playing a Havel team that you licked pretty good last year. They got a lot of guys returning. Beverly does not have a lot of guys returning. What's going to happen in Jeff Hutton's second year? What happens with Fenwick? They're facing a Norton team that I believe went 9-2 during the season last year, or 9-3 maybe. Lost to, I want to say, North Reading in the state quarterfinals before North Reading won their semifinal and played Swampscott in the bowl. Some new faces in Marblehead. I'm sorry, in Fenwick. So how can they turn it around there? I mean, there's tons of questions. You guys must have some too.
I would say the game that the website is doing would be the Danvers Tewksbury game on Friday night, and just where's Danvers? Where's Danvers and Tewksbury? The two very good leagues. I mean,
new offense in Danvers.
Yeah.
some of those guys now going into their third year as starters, and they're only juniors. So how much have they progressed and improved, that kind of thing? Are they ready to be big time contributors this year? That's a great question.
Yeah,
good one. Yeah, I'll throw another one out there. I want to know how much is in addition to the quarterback questions at the prep and a little bit at Fenwick too, although we've heard great things about Bryce Lehman in the preseason. I'd love to see what he does in a regular game, because if he's on, I think they're going to reload and be a potential Super Bowl team again. But how often is Masco going to throw the ball? They had a great 7-on-7. They got all kinds of weapons on the outside. I mean, a real running team, and they have a really good running back in Sam Nadwarny, Matt's younger brother. But how much are they going to throw the ball? Are they going to let Matt Richardson go out and sling it all over the place? And if so, how dangerous are they going to be? That's something I have my eyes on.
good point.
I feel like Swampscott's going to be really good defensively, but again,
they've lost a lot, I think, right?
They lost a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Carter Spotty's back. I want to say Elijah Burns is back. But quarterback battle between a senior and a freshman this year. Is the freshman ready? Do you have a guy that could potentially play 4 years for you? Or do you go with the so-called sure thing and maybe groom the freshman and play the senior? They're going to play great defense. I mean, that's just, they're going to play well up front. That's just the nature of what they do there. And they have some of the best coaches around. So, they're going to be a good team, but they've been so good the last few years. Can they live up to that? I don't know. What's going to happen with Essex Tech? These poor guys feel like they've been hit by the injury bug the last few years. They've been plagued by certain things. Now they have depth. They got a lot of seniors. They got Devin LeBron is back at quarterback. They lose Jace Dooley, their great receiver, to Peabody, but it seems like some other guys are ready to step up. Can they make a move in the Commonwealth Athletic League? That's what's great about this time of year. There's tons of questions about all the different teams. Is Ipswich better than they were a year ago? I hope so. 1-10 last year. Can they turn it around with Henry Wright leading the charge there? What's going to happen to Hamilton Wenham with Tim Frymouth taking the controls of that program? Can Salem keep it going, from a 6-5 season? Do they have enough momentum to keep swinging forward? What's Gloucester going to do to get better? What's Manchester Essex going to do off of their great season a year ago? Can they keep it going? I mean, on and on and on and on.
Hey, we're almost out of time, but Nick Kukuru, close us out here. What's your question or two this weekend?
Sure. I mean, I'm interested to see how Gloucester's offensive line looks. This is the most continuity, Danny O'Connor's had in his 4 years as head coach. All 5 kids, started at one point last year that they have returned on the line. So that's been a bit of a weakness for them. They're hoping to turn it to a strength. And Manchester Essex, see how they can rebuild that passing attack with AJ Palazzola gone. Brennan Twombly's back at quarterback. He's dynamite. But Palazzola got about 65% of their passing yards last year. So they're going to have to find a new weapon or spread it around. Interested to see who's going to fill in that role and catch those passes.
All right, gentlemen, great stuff. We'll stop here, and we'll be back next week, and we can maybe do a couple of breakdown a couple of specific games, which we didn't necessarily do so much this week, but we'll be doing some of that, as well as the other fall sports as well here on the Sports Writers Podcast. Gentlemen, great seeing you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Bill.